Hi, everybody. Sherry Leopold here, and I am really excited to bring you another Wow Warrior for 2024. And I want to welcome Kerri Lewis. Hi, Kerri.
I am so honored and excited to be here. Thank you so much, Sherry, for the beautiful invitation.
You are so welcome. So, I would love for you to share a little bit about what you do, Kerri. Obviously, everybody already knows you are an exceptional, extraordinary woman, but why don't you share with them a little bit about what you do and how you serve people?
Yes, thank you. So, I am an addiction and mental health recovery coach and speaker, talking about all topics regarding overcoming addiction and moving through depression and anxiety so that you can really experience life free from suffering and on your own terms. I essentially show up authentically and in doing so empower others to do the same.
How beautifully said. And I think it's a very big topic but that is so needed to be brought into the light rather than the dark.
Mhm.
So I do want to ask you a few more questions. So as one of our Woman of Worth warriors, our WOW warriors, what does it mean to you to be a woman of worth? What does that bring up in you?
Strength, resiliency, compassion, self love. Really, when you love yourself immensely, you can't help but be a shining example of love for everybody else, women and men included. And there's no competition, there's no comparison, there's no judgment. When you're a woman of worth, you are unapologetic, you're unique, you're quirky, and again, as I alluded to when I explained what it is I do, when you show up fully embracing the whole of you, you're pretty, you're messy, the good, the bad, you empower other people to do the same and feel safe to do the same. And that to me is the epitome of a woman of worth.
So, you got to know that I love that because that is like totally my heart center. So when we met the first time, I was like, oh, she's my people.
Yeah, likewise. I felt the same.
So I want to ask you, was there a pivotal moment or a challenge that you faced on your path to becoming that woman of worth that you had some event or some challenge that you faced, and what did you do to overcome it?
Mm, that's a really great question. And it's interesting you asked. I had three. And the first one I just remembered the other day because it was when I was a child. But the one in which I really recognized I was no longer going to conform to anybody's expectation of how I needed to show up was I had been in a 5-year relationship seeped with domestic abuse and addiction on both of our parts. And when I realized that I needed to leave, my ex partner held me against my will, sexually assaulted me, and essentially looked over me and almost baited me, saying that he was going to break my spirit. And I remember in that moment having this almost out of body experience. And I said to myself, never again will I allow myself to be under the authority or control of anybody outside of who I am. And it took me many, many years and a lot of healing to get there. But that was a moment where I knew I was no longer going to adhere to or conform to somebody else's expectations of who they thought I needed to be.
Wow, that was a powerful story and a very powerful message. And I think it kind of leads right into my next question very nicely is what impact do you want to have on the world as Kerri Lewis? What is it that I guess it's your legacy, right? What is it that somebody's going to say about Kerri Lewis when one day you are no longer here?
Mm. Well, I've already made an impact, and I promised myself that I was going to break the generational trauma that pervaded my family. And I look at my two daughters who are strong fierce advocates for themselves in high school who are unique and authentic and individual. And I already know that if I passed away today, I will have succeeded at achieving what I want my legacy to be. But from a broader perspective and globally, I intend and will be a motivational speaker known throughout the globe. And it's all about showing up as love. And what does that really mean? Well, that means loving yourself so much that, again, you're not conforming to the expectations of society. You're not conforming to the expectations of your family. You're showing up and doing what feels really good, nurturing, and supportive to you. Because when you do that, you cannot help but show up and be nurturing, supportive, and loving to everybody else, judgment free. If you feel so good in your own skin, all you're going to want to do is help other people rise and show up and service to themselves rather than cut them down and judge them for who you think you need them to be. And so my legacy is to love myself so much that I really show up as love in the world so that other people can do the same.
Whew, that was awesome. I feel like the cheerleader right now.
I love it, but it's so true, right? And the thing is from an energetic perspective, we know that we're loved because
Yes.
we exude it. And that's really what I want other people to have permission to do, to just show up and exude it. They don't even have to talk. You are that, you know?
Absolutely. Perfectly said. So, when we talk about a woman of worth, typically people will say, sometimes they'll say, you're an inspiration to me, and I've been told that as well. But I would like to ask you, Kerri, who is it that's been a powerful woman role model for you, living or deceased? It doesn't matter. We say famous or not famous, but who is it that has helped shaped Kerri Lewis to the person you are today?
Well, my mom and my grandmother and my twin sister. Really, for all different reasons. My grandmother, schizophrenic, unapologetic. She didn't have the lens to worry about what other people thought because of her mental health. And so she would whip out her teeth on a counter while we were in a restaurant. And at the time, I was young and I was embarrassed, but I realized she didn't concern herself with the good opinions of other people. And as I've gotten older, I realize I'm a wonderful example of who she is. My mother went to Smith College, had an arduous life, fought incredibly hard on her mental health. And though at this time she struggles with her mental health, at one point I saw her go from, very dejected by life to persevering and having 6 children and really fighting for her mental health. And so she's been the greatest teacher to me for always not just consuming information, but taking action and applying it. And then lastly, my twin sister, I wouldn't be here today without her. I showed up at her house, my face kicked in, having been beaten by my ex one more time. And she looked at me and she said, Kerri, you're not going to be here if you continue to stay in this relationship and make the choices you're making. And her having the ability to have that tough conversation with me led me to make really hard choices, be brave enough to break free of addiction and abuse, and learn to have my own voice and speak my truth to my children, my family, and my clients, so that hopefully, even if the conversation doesn't feel like it's not something you want to hear, it's a thing you need to hear so that you can show up and take action and save yourself.
Ooh, I love that. That's amazing. So I want to ask, in a society where self-love and self-acceptance is so undervalued, and we've talked about that before, what would you say to a woman who is struggling right now, watching this, that maybe didn't feel strong and confident in herself and didn't believe in herself and maybe was lacking in that self-love? What would you say to her?
Mm. Well, here's the thing. You have to start small. I think the biggest issue I see in a lot of the coaching and mental health narratives is take a huge leap. You can't. Your subconscious is not ready for that. And if you don't love yourself enough, who do you love enough to start small. And what I mean by that is I didn't love myself enough to get sober in my teens. I didn't love myself enough to leave my ex. I didn't care if I lived or died because I was in immense pain. But I did love my twin sister. And can you find a why, something greater than yourself that you love enough to start to give yourself permission, to give yourself grace, meaning to just be a little kind to yourself? And then you got to start small. So instead of doing all the big, hard things, leaving the abusive job, leaving the toxic relationship, stopping drinking, can you show up and drink a glass of water and celebrate yourself for that? Can you do that? Because it's the small, tiny choices that you make consistently that help you learn that you are worthy of making the bigger choices. But you can't do that until you make the small ones.
Absolutely. So well said, and such incredible, inspiring advice. I am certain that people are over the moon inspired, Kerri, which I always am every time I talk to you. How would somebody get in contact with you, Kerri, or, maybe talk to you about your coaching?
Yeah, so it's kerrilewis.coach across all social media platforms, including my website. It makes it really easy. And on my website, I have my phone number because I love good conversation and I want to be accessible to anybody who is taking that leap of faith, because sometimes it's the simple act of picking up the phone is the biggest act of bravery you'll ever take in showing up in self-love for yourself.
Awesome. And I just once again want to say to you, congratulations for being a 2024 WOW Warrior. We are so proud to have you part of this community, Kerri, and you are doing beautiful things in the world, and your love just radiates and shines every time you speak. So thank you so much for being part of the 2024 WOW Warrior community.
Sherry, thank you for being you, for highlighting fellow women. I think that when we women collectively come together and stop trying to compete with each other, the world is going to be more compassionate and loving. And I am in deep gratitude for all of the work you do. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome.